Good morning, welcome to Morning Outlook. This is Kim speaking on Monday the 11th of May. So looking at the markets here, and the first thing is of course hitting the headlines is the coronavirus. It seems to be there seems to be new cases in places and increasing cases in places where it was thought to be cleared, as such as South Korea, Germany, etc. Well, I say cleared, but clearing and reducing significantly. But there does seem to be a second wave coming through some of these countries, and it's obviously building lots of confusion. Talking of confusion, there was certainly plenty out last night when Boris Johnson spoke, or following Boris Johnson's speech. People now probably less clear of what they got to do than previously. So there has been built, or there is certainly a point of where people are certainly uncertain, and uncertainty isn't good for the markets. So let's have a look at these markets. We're starting off with the euro dollar as ever on the dailies here. So looking at the sort of the picture, the big weekly picture still downwards. The daily trend or daily range here is a ranging market. We're sitting between this sort of 77.23 area and somewhere up here about 11. So there's the sort of key area where it's sitting. Question is here is we sort of started seeing Thursday into Friday pushing more positively, but Friday really not holding on to the gains as I push through here. It did sell off a little bit on Friday there, but lower highs, lower lows, that's been broken. We had a bit of divergence across the absolute lows here and a higher low put in. It's not massively convincing. We do have the weekly pivot above here. Looking at sort of stronger trend, the question really is are we going to see a break of this 60-50? A break of that 60-50 really puts me on the short side. We do have the weekly pivot, we do have these highs above. If we can break to the above these highs here, then it's a more bullish outlook, at least back up towards those highs. But as you can see, back to the dailies, these aren't clear markets in terms of a solid trend in one direction or the other. We've been sitting in this range for a while. After a while, ranges tend to break, and you see either a push to the lows or the highs here. And at the moment, well, it just remains pretty range bound. So it is a case of, as I said, looking back at this 60-minute chart and sort of taking a gauge once it's shown its hand a little. Okay, there's the euro. The pound, not too different at all here. Range bound on the dailies here, so it's sat in it. It's got a clear range over the last few weeks here. It's put in. So just really looking at that again, it's pushed up, held on a little bit more to its gains on Friday there. Again, this 4-hourly trend broken. The sort of downward trend seems to be broken, which we saw, as I say, Thursday, Friday in these markets, and it's in a bit of a wedge pattern kicking in there. Not so, again, similar-ish picture. It does have the weekly pivot below, maybe a break below the daily pivot may see us running towards that, but with what it looks a little bit more positive here to me. There's just a strength of the moves. Okay, it had the retrace later there, and I'm just wondering if we can pitch back up. Maybe it becomes on the buy side above that 200, 500 point moving averages. It's a sell for me below that daily really. So again, it is one of those either or. It's not. My preference really would be if it broke to the upside, to be fair. Dollar yen, well, in Japan, the Bank of Japan looked at a lot of opinions, and there's a high priority task is to prevent companies from going bankrupt and jobs lost. So timing of hitting inflation target to be delayed. Just looking through notes here. They may face contractions in GDP last seen during the Great Depression in the 1930s. So really expecting almost the worst sitting there. So we'll see how things materialise here in the market, but you can see the yen is being sold at the moment, the dollar pushing up here, higher lows, higher highs, even on the 4 hourlies here, already pushed up to its weekly R1. The only thing looking at the lower time frames here is that we've sort of been pushing up in these high lows, high highs, and now running into the 60-minute 500. Will this hold is the question. Just really trying to get a read on this in terms of momentum and also in terms of there's a bit of divergence into this move here. So although volume wise we've seen a sort of a decent push up through here, well, if it really needs to break above that 200 to be perhaps more convincing for the rest of the day. But for now, well, consolidation, we'll see. It may occur here. As I say, if we break up there, well, we've got to be looking towards the long side, but just got to do a bit more analysis in terms of whether that's just rolling back to prior highs. In fact, I've got a feeling it's not far. It's alright. I was just looking across this market as I'm speaking here. It's not too far off these body highs here, this sort of range that sort of sits there. So maybe we'll see a bit of a correction back south a little bit on that. But it had been picking up quite strongly, but the move's already gone, but so much of that move's already gone through the Asian session there. Okay, Aussie, it's the star of the show really. It's the strongest over the last month against the US dollar, against any pairing really. It's been pushing up reasonably well. So it looks to me like there's a bit of divergence going on, well, nearly. It's not quite into new highs here, but may materialise. Shorter time frame, there's certainly a bit of divergence here. It's almost, well, it's a bit of a Gartley pattern that went up here. It's pushed up through. There was an 886 here. It's pushed up a little bit higher, not quite into the prior highs there completely, but either way, well, maybe we'll get a bit of a correction in these markets. We'll see how they run this morning, but really looking at the trend across the lows there. If you come down one more time frame, if you draw a trend line across maybe below that daily pivot, it becomes a bit of a softer target. This last movement here really going without any sort of solid strength behind it. Other moves that we've seen some decent strength in there. There's volume. This looks a little bit soft to me at this stage. Okay, that's the Aussie, and finally the Canadian dollar. So Canadian dollar, well, lower highs, almost lower lows. It's still got that sort of range here as well. It's probably more of a sloping range that was sitting in a trending range. It's sort of cleaner in some respects. It was certainly getting stronger towards the mid to end of last week here. There's a bit of divergence going off across these lows. There's a weekly pivot above. When you come, then it just sort of seems to be petering out here. You see the volumes just have been dropping. Okay, this sort of Asian session volumes here, so you've got to be a bit careful and reading too much into those. But it does look well towards the soft side here. Okay, and maybe, as I say, momentum just coming away. You see there's a big divergence across the lows here on the MACD there across those 60 minutes. So maybe if it gets back above that daily, it's got some room to move, but obviously the risk is it just runs towards that 50 and stalls with those prior highs there and lows. So that's quite a key area sitting around that 39.62 area. Okay, that's the CAD, and let's have a look at oil next, as it's a hot topic at the moment. And well, you see the consolidation there, and you see it from the dailies, the consolidation starting to build a little bit there. Certainly it's the 19th. I kept on mentioning the 18th. It's 19th is the last day of this current forward contract, or near-term contract I should say. You see the consolidation sitting across there on the 4 hourlies as well, and chopping away on the 60 minutes. So not really showing its hand too much. I'm looking at maybe more potential of a bit more of a correction to the downside on oil. So as I said last week, I'd taken a small position short on it. I erring still towards that sort of picture of more of a correction, but perhaps not to sort of the size of corrections, certainly not necessarily the negative corrections, because we've seen a lot of contracts unwound for this front month, so there won't be the same sort of pressures on selling at that point, as far as I can see. Okay, that's pretty much it. Oh, S&Ps, of course, you want to have a quick look at the S&Ps, look at the equity markets, what's going on there. Continued to push really last week and into this morning. We're not too far off of those prior highs there. Just managed to close above the 4-hourly 500, but softening as I speak. But as I say, the general trend's up, maybe catching a bit of support off a retrace here may give another opportunity. Maybe I was just looking to see if there's divergence across here. There is effectively divergence across here. The RSI not really pushing up much higher, but price continues. So a bit of softening maybe. We'll see how it materializes through today. But as I said, if we catch a bit of a retrace here into some support, maybe the daily pivot, it may be a point of catching a continuation move. That's it for me. Have a great day. Bye for now.